Good afternoon. It looks like it's about that time to get started. We have a number of people in attendance. If you cannot hear me, then I'd say raise your hand, but you really can't. So we're going to get started. Quick housekeeping. Being a webinar, I can't see you, but I can see questions that you post into the questions box or field. So please feel free to ask your questions. I'll do my best to answer them as we go. If I don't happen to answer your question, then please send me an email. My contact information is on the very last slide. I'll leave that up for a little bit. And otherwise, you can always get a hold of me through the James Moore ticketing system. And you can find that by going to technology.jmco.com. So why are we here? The main purpose of spending the next 30 to 45 minutes together is really just to help raise awareness to the people that have to work at home now because of COVID-19. And while I don't really want to make this about COVID-19, that's the root of the problem, or the root of the situation, rather. That's what's kicked this off. So because of COVID-19, this pandemic, which is affecting the entire country, a lot of businesses that have been historically office workers are not really prepared for their staff to work remotely. A lot of things have changed because of this, both personally and professionally. Personally, like everybody else, I'm washing my hands more than ever. Also, because of the pandemic and the risk of catching the coronavirus, I've not gotten a haircut in weeks, and it's killing me. I'm starting to look a little bit like a chia pet. But besides that, the workplace has changed. People are not going to the office as much. Most people are working from home. They could be working from their couch. They could be working from the dining room table. They may have the benefit of having a dedicated office space set up. When I work from home, I actually work outside of my shop because that's the only place I can find solitude, where I can separate myself from the rest of the world so I could focus on my work. So besides remote working remotely, other things that we have to deal with is the limited social interaction that we have. That affects us from a psychological standpoint, both personally and professionally. We're not hanging out with friends that we normally would hang out with. We're not seeing coworkers that we would normally see. We're also somewhat distanced. We don't have the direct supervision that we're accustomed to having. We don't have the oversight. We may even feel a little bit isolated and cooped up. So we're knuckling down, we're just kind of putting our heads down and plowing through the work. And in doing so, we may not be appreciating the fact that the cyber criminals also are aware of the pandemic, and they are certainly going to take advantage of it. Why not? It's their job model. The more scared we are, the easier it is for them to trick us into giving away our information. So, we've all heard this before. There are common cyber threats that each of us are facing, both in the workplace and now that the workplace is extended to the home, there as well. And they've always been there. We've just never really focused on them. 3 key terms that you've probably heard in the past: phishing, vishing, and smishing. Phishing, everybody's very, very familiar with. That's those random emails you get where somebody is claiming to be somebody you know, your bank, the IRS, even now a healthcare provider, and they're trying to get you to do something. They're trying to gather information or get you to click a link. That's typically coming in via email, and they're very clever. The most common ones that we're seeing today are related to COVID-19 updates. Vishing, the same type of thing, except it's being done via voice. People are actually calling up your phones and saying, "Hey, this is Dr. Johnson from the CDC. Let me help you identify if you're vulnerable or if you're at risk. Hey, is your insurance up to date? Let me sell you more insurance." Any number of things. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to divulge information or go to a website that will then gather information or take other information from you. And then smishing is texting. Everybody by now has gotten at least one in their lifetime, a random text saying, "Hey, check your bank account information or verify your account or do this," and it comes in on a text message to your cell phone. And with today's generations and today's technology, that is very common. It's becoming more and more common because we are all engrossed in our text messages. And this could be the standard text messages on your cell phone. This could be your Facebook Messenger. Any number of texting services can be violated or can be used to violate you and your data. Along with those standard attacks, we still have the viruses and the worms that come out there, things that are going to infect your computer. And now that you're working from home, the likelihood and the risk goes up even higher. And we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Ransomware is a big player in today's workforce. Ransomware doesn't sleep. It's still the fastest growing cyber attack we've seen. It's still very effective. And ransomware comes in through phishing attacks. They can come in through smishing attacks. They often carry additional payloads, viruses, and worms to do other bad things. Ransomware is not going away, and with this pandemic and the fear associated with it, it's just going to continue to inflame. Ransomware, as everybody knows, encrypts your files so that you do not have access to them unless you pay ransom, unless you pay them a fee. Then you may or may not get your data back. We'll talk about ransomware in just a little bit deeper in just a few minutes, or more strictly, things we can do to help prevent it. And also what we're seeing a rise on is the direct attackers. When you're getting vished and you're getting phished, what they want to do is they want to get information from you so that they can then get into your computer. And with today's workforce not being accustomed to working remotely, a lot of businesses have put in remote solutions quickly without thinking fully about the security concerns of doing such. We're going to talk about some best practices here in just a little bit. But security has to accompany any workforce, whether they're in the office or whether they are working remotely. And most of this is, a lot of it's actually common sense. Some of it is a little bit less common. But once we raise awareness today, you'll be better prepared to identify these threats and help protect your organization from them. As I said, if you have any questions, just type them in the question box. So when we're talking about the workplace and whether it's the office or the home, there's some clear differences. For example, when you work in the office, you probably have a corporate firewall in place. This firewall most certainly has virus protection software on it, as does your computer. It probably has advanced filters that looks for malicious software, malicious code. It may have geolocation filters that prevent content coming from foreign locations, such as China and the Ukraine and Russia, places which are known for supporting the cyber terrorist activity. Firewalls also have advanced heuristics where they can look at and identify things that aren't necessarily identified as viruses yet because it just looks like a virus, or it carries some of the same markers or trends. A good, robust firewall in your corporation is a must, and many businesses, even most businesses, have them at this point. Office computers, corporate computers, organization computers, they're typically better maintained. They have their patches, they have their updates. The security on these computers is generally harder so that you can't inadvertently delete things or overwrite things you're not supposed to be able to. Also, typically in an office environment, the physical security is just simply better. There are walls, there are doors, there are locks. There's controlled access into the workplace, which helps prevent other types of attack. Now let's contrast this with your home. In your home, you typically do not have a firewall. And just because your internet service provider says, hey, our modem comes with a firewall, doesn't mean it's actually on the same class or scale. The firewall that you get with most internet service providers are from the modem or router that you get from Best Buy or some other office supply store or Amazon. Typically only have very rudimentary firewall capabilities, very basic level firewall. Also, who configures a firewall? More often than not, it's you. And in most situations, what we have found is, generally speaking, we pull these devices out of the box, we plug them up while we're talking to technical support on the telephone. This says put the blue cable in the first port, turn it on. Once you have internet, you're good to go. So the firewall and those devices may not even be enabled properly. You have to assume that you do not have a firewall in your home office. If you're using a personal computer, it may be an older computer that doesn't really have the patches on it. It may not be properly maintained. It may not be cleaned. It may not have good solid antivirus on it. Or if there is antivirus on it, it may not actually be monitored. It's kind of just doing its own thing in the background, and you trust it's working, but nobody's looking at it to make sure. Also, in the home environment, your computer is shared. You know, if it's your home computer, it may be the same computer that your spouse uses. It may be the same computer that your kids use. They may play games on it. They may hit social media. Any number of things. Their friends may come over and they all may surf Facebook together on it. You may not know. Now, you can have, and what we often recommend, is taking a corporate computer into your home. That alleviates some of the things. For example, a corporate computer will generally be maintained and will generally have the security put on it. But you're still not going to have a firewall. And it's possible that your corporate computer may inadvertently get shared by a kid or a spouse because it's there and it's convenient. Hopefully not, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But that's possible. The reality is, in the home environment, you are easier to attack. You're going to be more relaxed than what you would be in the office. You don't have all the safeties and the controls that you do in the office. Attackers know this. They are targeting people working from their home right now. Because again, like I said a minute ago, most workers today that are working out of their home because of this pandemic were thrust there. Not because the corporation wanted to, but because the corporation had to. I have a client that literally 3 weeks ago 4 weeks ago was literally talking, hey, we do not have a work from home policy. We cannot work from home effectively. It's not in our blood. We just can't do it. Now, today, a lot of the workforce is working from home. They had to find a way. They had to find the way to do it on the spot because they hadn't put any planning into how to do it large scale before COVID-19. Now, to keep production going at some level so they can keep money coming in the door, they had to do it and they were ill prepared. Luckily, we were able to help them and get them working remotely in a very safe fashion. So, some examples I want to kind of bring to light. Attack can happen to anyone. I'm going to pick on NASA mainly because I highly respect NASA. When I'm thinking of who has the best security, NASA's at the top of that list, right? I mean, these are the people that put a man on the moon. They have systems after systems of redundancy. They have security out the wazoo. It's amazing how much security they have. But there are still ways to get into them. 1999, NASA was hacked by a 15-year-old kid. Back then, this wasn't the internet. This was modem, dial-up. A 15-year-old kid found a remote network which had a connection back to NASA in Duluth, Virginia, that he was able to get in, break into the network through this location, jump across one of their routers, install some backdoors on their systems. He was able to pull down data, intercept communications for a little bit of time. He got some information away from NASA before he was discovered. Almost 20 years later, 2018, NASA was hacked again, and they've been attacked thousands of times between this, but between these two time frames, these are just two I wanted to point out. NASA was hacked in 2018 because somebody made a mistake on the NASA network. NASA, like a lot of companies, have what should be a separated network for vendors to access data. You know, think of how you would share files with one of your clients. NASA had kind of a similar thing. Somebody put a little $25 mini computer called a Raspberry Pi on that network. Other pieces of that network were not properly secured. Attackers discovered this device, started throwing commands against this device, and was able to break into this device. From that device, they were able to walk the network. They made as far as the deep space network and the radio telescopes. This was a big deal. The audit that was conducted after this, it was determined there was really a checklist of networking mistakes made at NASA and JPL. This goes to show that this can happen to anybody. If you're not actively thinking about security and data protection, and you can bet NASA is, and they were at these times, but if you're not actively thinking about it, it can turn around and it can bite you. Now, the important thing to note about both these scenarios, NASA was hacked from a remote location. They were also hacked not at NASA directly. These successful attacks didn't pound on NASA's front door. They went in through back channels. They went in through side doors. Kind of like what a lot of us are doing now. We weren't ready for the pandemic. We need a mobile workforce. Let's just start throwing VPNs out there and making connections into the network from anywhere. Those are side doors that lets the attackers in. Couple recommendations, just kind of off the cuff, if you will. First and foremost, don't let non-corporate computers talk to your corporate network. Since this is primarily for the end users, for the people kind of on the ground at the ground level doing the work, what this means to you is the organization doesn't want you to use your home computer for this. So they may have issued you a computer or issued you a tablet, and you may have to jump through a few hoops to get into the corporate network. The reason that's being done is because of these NASA examples. The corporation, the business, doesn't want a hacker to come in through your computer and jeopardize your client's data. 5 hard and fast rules. Whether this is your home computer or your office computer, which you've taken home, follow these rules and it will significantly improve your security posture. First and foremost, on the computer that you're going to use for work, stay off social media. Do not do online shopping. Stay off eBay, Amazon, any of those. Also avoid streaming products. Not that they're necessarily inherently safe, but they do open additional doors for you. Spotify, Pandora, Netflix. Although all those are generally safe, but they can be exploited. And more importantly, if you're used to using those services on that computer and you get redirected to a bogus or a bad site that's not really Netflix but looks like Netflix, but it's really malicious code, it won't raise any flags to you. If you get a pop-up that says, hey, you need to update this plugin to view this streaming content, you won't really think about it. You'll just click the button and install whatever it wants to install because you're accustomed to seeing that type of activity. So avoid social media, avoid online shopping, avoid unnecessary internet browsing on that computer that you're going to use for work. And by all means, if you get a pop-up, be cautious about what you click on. Just because it says you have to click on this link and you have to update this plugin doesn't necessarily mean that you do. The best thing to do is when you get a pop-up, reach out to IT. For most everybody in this conversation, James Moore is your IT. Reach out to us. We are happy to help you. If James Moore is not your IT, we're still happy to help you. Give us a call. But before you click on pop-ups and allow things to be installed, pause a second and ask one of my guys. I alluded to this a minute ago, but do not let other people play on your computer. And play is just kind of a random term. Don't let your spouse do his bank account on your work computer. Definitely don't let your kids on your work computer. Your work computer should be treated as sacred ground. Keep it safe. If you're the only one working on it, the risks of it being compromised go way down, especially after this conversation. If this is a corporate computer, we'll have some controls in place to help protect you, but just the fact that you're at home, only some of those protections are going to work. Because again, at home, you don't have a firewall. Don't click links, and this is valid anytime. If you get an email, don't click the link in the email unless you know for a fact that you are expecting that email. Even if you know who that email is coming from, even if you know where that link is, even though if you think you know where that link is coming from, unless you have gotten confirmation ahead of time from the sender that they are going to send you that link. And I say link, it could be an attached document. It could be a PDF. In this time of social distancing, we're not seeing our kids as much. We're not seeing our parents as much. We're not seeing our friends as much. Just because you get a picture from a sibling or a relative or a friend that says, "Hey, look at the latest pictures from my kids," doesn't mean it came from them. If you get that picture, call them on the phone. It'd be good to call them anyhow. You probably haven't seen them in weeks. Call them on the phone. "Hey, Sally, did you send me this email with pictures?" Sally will say yes or no. If she says yes, okay, it's probably safe. If she says no, delete it. Don't open it. Don't mess with it. If you get a letter from the CDC, from your hospital, from your banking institution that has a link in it or has an attachment on it, don't click it. These people will not send you links. They will not send you attachments. If you get an email that says, COVID-19 update, pandemic update, health insurance, anything like that that you're not expecting from a trusted source that told you they were going to send you something, don't click on it, don't open it. If you want to look at the current statistics on COVID-19, go to the CDC's website and look. If you need to deal with your bank for something, go to your bank's website and look. Don't ever click a link or follow an attachment in an email, social media, any of that. And that holds true forever. Also, do not stay connected to your corporate network. What I mean is there's two common scenarios in place right now for the remote workforce. Scenario one is you're on a corporate computer and you're connected through what's called a virtual private network. That virtual private network builds a direct path between that computer and your corporate network. So it's just like you were setting in the office. If that local computer gets compromised and an attacker gets in, he can use that VPN to directly attack your corporate resources. The other scenario is you were using a computer, home computer, personal computer, tablet, could be a company issue computer, to remotely connect to the desktop of another computer. And all your work is being done on that computer, which is still at the office. And the only thing passing through through the internet is keyboard, mouse, and video, sometimes sound. That's a little bit safer from an attack posture, but there's still some vulnerabilities to that. If you're done working for the day, if you're going to lunch, if you're going to be away from your computer for more than just a few minutes, you should always disconnect from that remote session, whether it's a VPN or whether it's the remote connection software, whatever you're using. If it's something that James Moore set up for you, it's called Screen Connect. But whatever you're using, if you're going to be away from your computer for more than just a few minutes, disconnect that session. You can go right back in and go back to work. But if your computer is compromised and you walk away from your computer, if there's an attacker in your machine, they are waiting for you to walk away so they can exploit that connection that you have, so they can spread to the corporate environment. So don't leave that computer unattended. Other just common recommendations. Again, these are, we're bringing these to light because of the COVID-19, but these stand true whenever. Use unique passwords. Passphrases are better. What I mean by that is a complex password of 8 to 12 characters is okay. You know, using capitalization, an @ here, a slash there, numbers. That's good, but the current recommendation from most of the industry resources are moved to passphrases, longer strings of words. You can still use capitalization. You can still use advanced characters. I actually like to use intentional misspellings or unique spellings, but phrases. So instead of having 10 characters randomly generated, having a long phrase like "we the people" or "to boldly go where no one has gone before." Use those phrases. What has been found is the longer the password, the harder it is to crack. Still use capitalization, still use punctuation, still use spaces and special characters, but make it longer. If you make it a phrase that you're familiar with, then it will be harder to crack. Don't use something that you would put on Facebook, however. Don't use something as common as examples I gave. Don't use "we the people" or "to boldly go." Just one, I'm already using those and just want to be fair. But don't use those. Use something that's unique to you. Years ago, I had a client that literally used the first lyric of a Def Leppard song. Her password was probably 200 characters, but she could type it out like it was nothing, and it would never, ever get cracked. Just too long. Also, don't write your passwords down, especially since you're working from home. No sticky on the monitor, no sticky under the keyboard. Use some type of encrypted password manager if you have to. The two that come to mind: LastPass, which is actually what a product which a number of us use. NordPass is another very popular one. and you can get enterprise versions of these. What's nice about these is you don't have to remember the password to all these different sites. You know this one great password for this password manager, and it keeps the rest of them. And it keeps them in a secure database that's encrypted, that generally can't be broken. Also, any solution that you use, you want to use two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is having more than one way to authenticate yourself at the same time. So typically, it's known as something you know and something you have. For example, when you go into an ATM machine, ATMs are the classic two-factor authentication. Something you have, your ATM card. Something you know, your PIN number. If you have either one of those but not both, you can't get into you can't get into the account. You have to have both at that time. Remote logins is the same way. The product that we set up, a lot of times it's you have to be able to log in, you have to know the passphrase to the remote access, and you have to give us a code that we will send you in an email or text message. It's great that you know the password, but if you don't have the code, you can't get in. That goes a long way in preventing account hijacks. Now, does not alleviate the responsibility of having a good, unique password, but used together, it makes for a very strong level of protection. And again, I touched on this quite a bit a little while ago. Do not respond to account verifications, requests for information, links, any of that. Because if you give an attacker the opportunity to install something on their machine, then they can install password crackers. And even with two-factor, if they can get into one device and then get into the second device, they may be able to get in a position where they can get both your password and intercept that security token that comes in as a two-factor. If everything really goes sideways, it takes a lot more to do that, but it is possible. So let's just eliminate that. Don't click on links, don't open attachments. The next thing I want to touch on is the feeling of isolation that we all feel. Now, truth be told, I'm an IT guy. As an IT guy, I'm an introvert. I like it when I'm secluded. I like it when I'm away from people. A lot of IT guys are that way. So when the government started talking about social distancing and stay at home, work from home, we're secretly saying, hey, this is fantastic. This is what we've done our entire life. Most people are not wired that way, however. Most people need that social interaction. Most people have to see their friends, have to see people. So just because you work from home doesn't mean you can't do that. Most people, at least everybody that should be in this conversation, most people have things like Skype, Teams, any number of things. Use video conferencing. You can use Skype or Microsoft Teams to make an on-demand, instantaneous video call to your coworkers. So instead of picking up the phone, do a video call just so you can see their face. My team has been working remotely for a couple years now. The entire IT team that supports most of you work from their homes every day. We use video communication most of the time. We almost never pick the phone up. It's rare that any of us actually pick the phone up. We use our Skype and our Teams to do video calls on everything. We have a weekly meeting. It's hosted on Skype for Business, and it's a video call. And one of the requirements of that meeting is everybody turns on their video. Impromptu meetings, a lot of times. We'll simply call a quick meeting that could be done over the phone, but we'll just call a quick Skype for Business meeting, and we'll turn on the cameras. And that's a requirement. Everybody turn on the camera so we can see each other. That gives a couple of benefits. One, if you're hosting the meeting or you're calling the meeting, you can gauge responses. You can still read body language. You can still read expressions. But also, in the current state that we're in, it lets you build that personal connection. It lets you reinforce the friendships and the relationships that you've already had, because now you get to see the person. And you know what? It's okay if you indulge in a little bit of banter in these calls. My team in our weekly meeting, we have banter going back and forth. We make jokes with each other. We have conversations with each other, and it's okay. As a business, as a team leader, I recognize that that's important for my workforce who is now mobile and don't get to see each other every day. I know that's important for them. It helps them stay in contact, helps build better rapport, and helps reinforce trust, quite frankly. So do that. If you need to call a coworker, call them on Skype. Use video. Take a few minutes out of the day and just check in on somebody. If you've not heard from Sally in a while, Sally's head down working hard, but you've not really heard from her in a while, give her a call. Ask her how she's doing. Ask Bob how he's doing. Work with your coworkers like you would in the office. We don't have the water cooler to hang around, but we can still reach out on a personal level. You have to remember that we're not islands. We need that interaction, and with that interaction also comes collaboration, becomes with better morale. And let's face it, in the eye of the storm, so to speak, while we're dealing with this pandemic, we're kind of waiting for the next bit of news, the next change. We can get a little bit uneasy. Reach out to your coworkers. Also, I gotta tell you, I don't work from home that often, but when I do, it's kind of nice. I mentioned earlier I work out of my shop. My shop is a metal building. My desk space, my dedicated desk space in my shop for my office work is right by the door. I get to look out and I get to see the environment. I can smell the fresh air coming in. I have ducks. Not really a dog or cat fan, although I have a dog, but I got ducks. My ducks will come up to the door of my shop and want food. And it's okay. I'll get up and I'll give them food. But enjoy that capability. Because let's face it, in the office workspace, you don't get that. Excuse me. Not COVID, just a dry throat from all the talking. Honeyed Earl Grey. Anyhow, enjoy that capability. We don't know how long this is going to last, so enjoy it while we can. And at James Moore, I have a great office. I have windows I can look out, but it's not the same. I can look out the windows, but I'm still smelling air conditioned air. When I'm working from home, I smell fresh air. Or since I'm in my shop, grease and oil. But that's what I like. Take advantage of that. It's important. Helps with your morale. In summary, there's really no magic recipe to this. Everything that I've discussed today, you've probably already heard before, except the whole duck thing. You've probably already heard before. It's really nothing new. The biggest thing we have to be aware of is the higher risk from working at home, because the attackers know you're working from home. So follow best practices. Talk with co-workers over video whenever possible. Take a good deep breath of fresh air a couple times a day, especially now that it looks like it may have stopped raining. And we'll get through this together. If there are any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them, or you can type them in the chat window, or question window rather. This is awkward. Webinar silence. I do actually really enjoy it when my ducks visit. Why does it say I'm Stacy? Um, because Stacy was the original organizer, but she could not stay in the call. So she basically just transferred the role to me. And for whatever reason, I appear as Stacy in the chat. But I am not Stacy, just to be clear. I am Curtis. Okay. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if there's anything that you need to talk about from a technology standpoint, or even how best to work from home, like I said, my team has been working from home for a number of years now. If you need some input or advice, reach out to me. Everybody in this call should know our 800 number. If not, you can find it at technology.jmco.com. You can also send me an email. My email address is posted. And I hope each and every one of you stay safe, smell the roses, enjoy the sunshine, and have a great day. Thank you for joining me.